Oh, welcome. As I usually say, good morning or good evening or good night, depending on where and whenever you are watching this. Um, so this week, I'm lucky to I have two of the founders of Wild East Brewing in Brooklyn. I have Tyler and Brett, who are, as I say, two of the three people who founded it, but their third was Lindsay. Um, and they Wild East, I don't know if anybody who's familiar with it, but Wild East is a brewery founded in Brooklyn, I think just on the edge of when the pandemic started. So great timing. But with the
hmm
intention originally to focus on more kind of wild, as it suggests in the name, wild yeast mixed fermentation brewing, though I think that has changed a little bit, has it?
Yeah, it's
It has,
evolved.
yeah.
I would say it was never we never wanted to be 100% mixed fermentation, but I would say it was and still is a big part of the brewery. It's kind of the heart and soul of the brewery in some ways.
I'm back.
But if to reach a certain volume in capacity, you do have to expand your breadth of what you do. And so, in addition to those beers, we fell into doing a lot of lagers, which we're very happy about. And that's a big part of our portfolio. But also, we do quite a bit of English style ales and also a lot of West Coast or also known as American style IPAs and pale ales. Those are the four main, I guess, buckets of what we do.
Right.
And yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if Brett wanted to elaborate.
Yeah, no, I
Right,
think you
whatever.
covered it pretty well. Yeah.
So maybe just take a step back. So I mean, like I said, there was three of you set up, but as I understand it, you weren't really. It wasn't like three people came together or had lived for years knowing each other, setting up with the plan to set up a brewery. You kind of came together because you all wanted to set up breweries individually, and then it kind of you were looking for other people, so it came together as a business partnership as such. Is that
Yeah, I think we started. I started writing a business plan around 2014, which I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to change careers into beer, and I wasn't too far along in that. Whenever I had, excuse me, I had a conversation with Tyler. I knew him from the homebrewing circuit here in the city, and we start. He was like interested in getting involved in whatever way, and I was like, well, honestly, I don't know what I'm doing. So the more heads we can put together here, the better off we'll be. And so then I think we worked on things for about a year or so, and then during our sort of the nascent stages of our fundraising, we met Lindsay, and she had a project she was trying to do. I think she was trying to do it in Colorado, where she's originally from, but that didn't work out. The partner she had had some family issues that she had to attend to, and just had to back out. So Lindsay was kind of like didn't know where to turn next, and we met her, and she immediately rewrote the business plan, and made it a lot more numbers focused. And we expanded what we wanted to do, and then that's when things kind of took off when we got the three of us together.
and how did that new business plan survive the first year then?
So it basically was working out well until we opened, and then when we opened, we had to. It wasn't even worth the uh, uh, the PDF that it was printed on, I guess I should say. And because then everything changed, and it's a whole new reality. We actually haven't kept it that up to date, and we're working on a new one that reflects the actual lay of the land in this current era of beer.
But okay, so you had to kind of adapt quickly then, because if, as I said, you opened literally just before everything shut down. It was like 3 or 4 months before it, was it?
Well, we
Yeah,
started brewing in late 2019, but then go ahead, Tyler. I think you.
For some reason.
Go ahead, Tyler. I think you have a good succinct version of this one.
Sorry, we're probably gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
My signal cut out for a second too. So yeah, we originally weren't planning on packaging immediately. We had a pretty robust tap room model. We were expecting a lot of sales through the tap room. We weren't set up for packaging at all, really. And as soon as the pandemic hit, I think we had planned on canning beer within, or probably about 6 months after our tap room was opening, and we did that relatively immediately. I think on our third batch of beer, so that happened. That we were forced into that, and we were forced into distribution, or a distribution model, a lot earlier than we had originally planned. And so yeah, from there we just had to kind of evolve and feel the market out, and then keep pivoting, keep making changes, and to eventually, as the market evolved too, through COVID and post COVID, kind of got us to where we are today.
Right, and you're back to being very much focused on the tap room again.
We
Yes.
are, but the distribution is a way bigger part than we ever thought it would be, just because the bars and tap rooms never came back the way they were pre-pandemic.
Right. And because the reason I'm asking about the tap room is, from what I could understand, that was like you did say it was very tap room focused, but you very much had an idea of being part of the community, of the local community. That was
Sure.
core to what you wanted to be. And that obviously, like, when you had to switch to the packaging and the distribution, then did you keep that distribution? Was it still very locally, or did you just kind of blast it out to wherever you could? Or
It started, we didn't really do the blast out to wherever we could, so to speak, but it started very much locally in New York City, primarily Brooklyn. We started close to home, and then it grew to Manhattan, and then outer parts of Queens, and then before we knew it, we were all over the state, and we were self-distribution for quite a while. And then I think the first outside territory outside of New York that we opened up was Washington, D.C., because it's relatively easy to distribute beer there. They have the fewest rules and regulations, and it might be one of the only states where you can just drive the beer into that region and distribute it yourself without a bunch of permits and fees.
yeah.
So we started doing that, and then that kind of opened the door to more of that DMV area, and Virginia, I think, was next. And then that was the first outside distributor we signed on with, handled DC and Virginia. And then from there we started to realize there was a lot of growth opportunity south of New York. We had sort of originally envisioned sending beer more north to like the New England area, but I think at that point, a lot of those states in New England that are north of us were still very much focused on hazy IPAs, maybe imperial adjunct stouts, things like that were a bit of a trend and a craze. Well, I guess they still are, but in those days they were really big. And we felt like south of us, for whatever reason, those states kind of understood what we did a little better, and they were more into like the simple, traditional, classic sort of styles. So for whatever reason, those states just seemed to resonate better with our brand and our offerings. And so we just continued to grow in those areas. And now we have Philadelphia, Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Virginia. And then in the last year, we expanded to the Carolinas. We're in North Carolina and South Carolina, and sent a little bit of beer to Georgia, but it's really up and down from about New York south, almost pretty much down to where Florida starts is where we've been sending beer and having some success.
Right. And like you mentioned there, like, I mean, you did mention, I suppose you can even just see it in the number of barrels behind you there, Brett. I mean, like we mentioned, there's a very strong focus on, was it a deliberate decision to be different because the market, you didn't want to be chasing a crowded market, or is this just the beers you're interested in that you really want to do these kind of mixed fermentation, traditional barrel age type of beers, or is it a mixture of both? Or
Well, I mean, mainly it's that that's the kind of beer that I've preferred to make as a home brewer, and then early in my brewing career, that was what I sort of specialized in. When I would get jobs, they would usually say, I want you to help us build our mixed ferm program. We're very fortunate that our approach to beer is what's kind of trending right now. When we thought we would, there's always a part of what you do, you have to respond to the market. So if we'd have done this 10 years ago, we would have looked a little different. Sure, we would have still made these kind of beers, but rather than having three West Coast or American type hoppy ales on, as we do right now, and one hazy beer, it would probably be the opposite of that. But since we opened when we did, there's been a definite shift back to more sessionable beers, lower ABVs, and that fits the kind of beers that I want to make. So, we're very surprised that how successful our English program is. The fact that we're selling, we're making 30 barrels a pop of like English pale ale and milds and bitters. We're that, and we're selling a lot of real ale on the cask engine. That is a thing that I think that even a few years ago wouldn't have been possible. But this, you do have to foster that. It doesn't just happen. So we did that, as well as as well as getting a little bit lucky with the market.
And where did that interest that you, I presume, both have in these kind of, like you said, cask, that is, like I said, that is not easy to come by. So where did your interest in that come from, or how did you experience it that you knew that this was what you wanted to drink and then to brew?
My general approach to beer is that each style has its own process. There's no one size fits all for how to make the beer, and similarly, there's no one size fits all process for how to package the beer. So the best way to serve a mild or a bitter is on cask. My preferred way to drink a stout is on nitro. I like package conditioned farmhouse ales. We have the biggest part of what we do with lager is Czech style lager, and those are served in a glass that's the same temperature as the beer itself, or as close as we can get it, and then it's served on a Luker side pool, and you get a proper pour. So it really comes down to like, those are the beers that I've learned to love from my travels, and then do it the right way.
Right. And so if someone comes into your tap room and you're looking for a lager, like I said, you have the thing, or if you're looking for a cask, you have the cask engine in that. So that determines, well, it doesn't determine, but you make sure it's served the right way.
Yeah.
And if you don't have, if you can't get another cask engine, then you have to limit the amount of cask beer you brew.
Exactly.
Okay. So
yeah, but we have another engine. We just don't have it installed yet. So we could have twice as much as we actually do. So.
Right. And so with all the mixed fermentation side of it, then, and so you've got your kind of your, I suppose, clean, and then you have your mixed fermentation. I mean, if I can describe that, do you have to keep them very much apart? Like, when you're talking mixed fermentation, sorry, can I first qualify? Are you doing anything like kind of spontaneous beers or anything like that that's really, can get really contaminated, I guess.
We did experiment with one batch that way. We didn't love the results. But we don't have a cool ship per se. And we're in a very industrial area, and I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to use ambient, use
Right.
air from outside. So we had to use a different method. And what we did was we controlled the temperature down to like an ambient temperature, and then we moved. We basically had it in Grundies that we moved into our barrel cellar and allowed whatever was sort of living in and on and around the barrels there to help inoculate. Is it method goose? No, but it is. There are many different ways to make spontaneous beer. Those barrels are still. Two of them have been included in blends, and the rest are still back there. I'm going to give them time to see if they turn around, but I'm prepared to let them go. It's like I said, it was an experimentation. We kind of knew what we were getting ourselves into. But generally speaking, yeah, the mixed fermentation, everything's pretty well kept separate. Certain different soft parts, separate hoses, generally speaking, separate vessels. If I have to use a vessel, from the mixed ferm side that goes back to the clean side, it gets multiple rounds of caustic cleaning, and then we either, if we can't swap out the soft parts entirely, we will autoclave them, and we've had no issues with any kind of cross contamination.
Yeah, because that anyone I've ever spoken to, that is their nightmare.
Big fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that people don't talk about, that is a bit, good cleaning practices and sanitation practices, and separate parts. But one thing that people don't talk about, and I think it's one of the most important things, is positive pressure. If there's positive pressure on your clean side tanks, then nothing's going to get into them. So that's a thing that I'm very obsessed with, is if I have to dry hop an IPA, then there's positive pressure on that tank. And we don't open after a tank is being cleaned and sanitized, it doesn't get open to the air. It gets purged with CO2, and then that gets displaced with the wort or the beer that's being transferred into it.
Right. It still sounds like an awful lot of a lot of extra work, but
it is, but it's a labor of love.
Yeah, that's what I was going to come to. And how are they selling? So, I mean, if you have this wider range of beers than maybe you initially intended, I guess the demand was there for the other one, but there must still be a demand for the type of beers that you want to brew.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for the most part, pretty much our entire portfolio, pretty close to our entire portfolio, are the beers we want to brew and want to drink. So I think that says a lot, because I think there are a lot of breweries out there that maybe don't necessarily make the beer that all the beer they want to drink. Some of it they just are, have to do it to make ends meet. I think we've been lucky that we do make the beers we like to drink, and it's something that we have to be excited about personally to want to make those beers. But all in all, there's a seasonality to it, but other than that, I would say it's taken us a while to figure out how much of which style and which season that we need to make in order to consistently sell it, so it doesn't hang around for too long. But we're getting closer all the time to finding the perfect balance of what we need to be releasing in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, in the winter, and we're just kind of playing that game of staying a little bit ahead of the seasons. Planning is a big part of it, so we always have to, when it's July and August, we have to start thinking about the fall, because some of the beers we make take some time. But we know that, beer we're making in July or August is gonna hit just right in late September, October. So there's a lot of just staying ahead of the seasonality aspect. But yeah, I think now over the last couple of years, we've slowly abandoned a few things here and there and tighten the portfolio in those 4 buckets I talked about earlier. Tighten those up and really just found a nice rotation and rhythm with, like, for instance, our West Coast IPAs, like those rotate. We have, I don't even know how many now, at least like 5 or 6, 7 of those that we rotate all year round. And it's mainly a matter of mixing up the hops. But we also have like a more amber, slightly maltier version of West Coast IPA that we like to release in the colder months. And the lagers, it's very seasonal. So it's like the pale lagers in the summer. We dabble in some of the dark or amber style lagers in the fall and the winter. And I think we've hit a pretty good stride in terms of having the beer sell out pretty close to immediately and not linger as much. And then like some of the stuff like the mixed firm saisons and some of the barrel aged beers we make that are a little more high end, those beers don't sell quite as fast, but we do like the fact that they don't sell out immediately, because we like having bottles hang around for a little while in the tap room, because we don't get to put those beers out as often. So and we do a pretty big volume of those beers. So it is nice to have those special offerings more or less always available in some capacity, and then have the lagers and the hoppy beers and the English ales and those things really just kind of disappear, and then we move on to the next one and we keep cranking those out.
And you were saying earlier about where your distribution is, that it's all down in a particular area, and also that about New York generally. I think that they're that it doesn't maybe strike someone as you have kind of mixed fermentation beers coming out of New York as much. And I'm wondering just about the kind of the market. So do you think New York or even Brooklyn itself is kind of more along a trend that you were saying, that things are changing, and that do you think it's more along the trend? Is it behind the trend, or is it just that these are beers that work better in this part of the country than in others? Or do you have to educate some people when they come in that they don't know what a saison is, and they're looking for something different? Or
I would say it's a little bit of all of that, but I'd say because we're in New York City, we get a lot of international travelers. We get people from Europe, South America, all over the world, and we're at the point where people come to New York and they're seeking us out, along with a short list of breweries. So a lot of people come to us knowing exactly what we do and the type of beers they want, and they know that we do those type of beers well. So that's a big part of it. I would say the people who for instance, don't know what a saison is are fewer and farther between, at least than they might have used to be 3, 4, 5, whatever years ago. So it is the market's maturing. We were a little ahead of the shift out of hazy IPAs to lagers and these other more classic styles, which I think was one of the best decisions we made. It took a little. It was scary as a new brewery, kind of bucking the current trend, at least in the U.S. and betting. We kind of had seen bits of it here and there. People being like, "Oh, I'm so tired of hazy IPAs," or these, too many breweries are doing nothing but IPAs. So we took a bit of a leap of faith, and based on what we had seen, getting ahead of that curve and saying, well, when this thing ends or this thing wanes, these people are going to be looking for something else. And so that was where we took a stance and kind of let the market fall into where we were, as we had always planned and hoped and assumed that that would be the case. And I think now we're starting to see other breweries do the same thing, and it's reassuring to know that we had a little bit of successful forward thinking in that regard.
Yeah, because I mean, anyone I've been talking to, you can see that trend is going. Like lagers are definitely coming back in. And the other thing
Mm-hmm.
that seems to be becoming more and more popular is the fact that it's a local beer, not just any craft beer. That it's local. Is that something that worked out? Because you mentioned there that you have a lot of international people coming to find you as well. So how much of it is split between international, who obviously, I mean, we know beer tourism. Like if you go someplace, you want the local beers, but do the locals want the beer as well? I guess is what I'm getting at. Do they
Yeah, I
appreciate
mean,
the fact it's local?
the locals are our the majority of our customers, and we find we're in a little bit of a industrial area that's been rezoned, and there's a lot of residential construction going on very close to us. But at the moment we're sort of like, we're in a little area that's across a road, like across the street from like an avenue from a main neighborhood, and we're kind of down near the canal, and so we don't see, we're more of a weekend destination for a lot of people, but we have our regulars that come in on weeknights, and yeah, then we get the domestic and international tourists, and they're so much fun to talk to, because people will come from Europe and say, hey, I've been hearing I need to come to you, like from over there, and it's very exciting to hear like about word of mouth from a different continent, sending people here, and same thing with domestic travelers. I've been hearing about you guys from the West Coast, like wow. It's amazing that to when we hear about people who've heard of us, we're still surprised when people have heard of us, I think sometimes.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I can only imagine the feeling that when someone's coming to check out your beers, must be good. Just looking at the barrels behind you. I mean, how many barrels do you have now?
We have 68 wine barrels. We have those were our regular wine, size wine barrels. Then we have I think we have 4 punch-ins, punch-in size. What was 800 liter. And then sorry, I've got a mosquito. It's really bothering me here. And then we have a number of bourbon barrels, though phasing that program out, as Tyler mentioned before, we find, we see the things that are strong for us, and one of the, a lot of our neighbors are making very robust imperial stouts that tend to have a lot of adjuncts, and we don't really like to make beer in that way, but I think the consumer, the majority of consumers who like those kind of beers do want it to be adulterated with whatever, marshmallows or almonds or whatever, and so we have a little bit of that. We have like basically a half batch left that we'll package in this fall, and then I think we'll be done with bourbon barrels for a while. But the majority of the beer that comes out of our mix from beer, it goes through foeders. We have 4 foeders, and one of them are sort of, I hate to call it a flagship because it's not available all the time, but it's called Contour Interval, and it's kind of our first saison that we started doing, and we use it in a sort of a Solera method where we take half the batch and package it, and then we replace half the batch. So a little bit of every batch that's ever been brewed is in the mix, and we've been very happy with it. And then we have a couple of other ones. One that we make like a traditional Berliner Weiss in, And again, it's a wonderful beer. If we were in an era where you could just make a simple plain Berliner Weiss, it would be great. But we tend to use fruit puree carefully, not in an overt way, but to make a beer that has a point of view. For example, the one we have on right now, it's called Turnstile Nopal, and we use a prickly pear puree and lime and some salt to sort of mimic a margarita, but it is still very much a delicate beer, and it's not it's a crowd pleaser because it's a bright pink color, and we find that a lot of times people drink with their eyes, and so that's the approach we tend to take with that. So and that says that foeder, and then we have one more that is sort of like seasonal. It's a 15 barrel, and so it's half the size of our others, and we can sort of like make whatever whatever we want through there. At the moment, it has a table beer that we're going to package next week, and then I have a beer to mail going to go in after that, and then finally we have a lager foeder that we I think this is going to be our last lager through it, and we're gonna move the table beer to that one and run that as a Solera as well, and then we'll be able to alternate between our two Solera saisons, so that maybe they come out quarterly, and we will have those beers pretty well year round, and we'll have a really good consistent flow of mixed fermentation saison, and I think that those are because we are known for that. And I want to make sure that we continue to push that type of beer.
Yeah, just the Solera. I've never actually had one. The Solera. Do you find that it does make a difference?
It's wonderful.
Does it?
It's great. Yeah, it speeds up the time that it takes to produce the beer. Otherwise, it can be ready in 3 to 4 months. If not for the Solera, it would take. I think the first batch took almost a year. It would take and actually it was more of it had more of the character of a Brett saison rather than the delicate acid of that we have in our lacto cultures that are in our mix. And so it gives you a consistent beer, and it gives it to you faster. The only downside is you only get half the volume. So,
but there's just a reason I was asking, I guess, is because there's the romanticism of you've got a little bit of the very first beer there that's still there, and you wonder whether the romanticism of that, just the fact of it, kind of influences the taste in your own head, or whether it actually does make a difference.
Yeah, no, I mean it's consistently a beloved beer. It was the first one we ever won a medal for in the New York State competition. It's I think that at the time it was only batch number 2, so it was 50-50 basically, or maybe it was 1/3 of the new stuff, but it was yeah, I mean, it's a beer that whenever we have people who come in and say, I'm not really into beer, I'm more of a wine drinker, what would you suggest I try? We put that beer in front of them, and I mean, the majority of the time, we've won somebody over.
Right. That's relatively unusual for mixed fermentation beers, because Brett is a bit of an acquired taste.
Our Brett is very subtle and well balanced. Even when we do 100% Brett fermentations, the culture that we use is very fruit forward, and subtle and soft. Not strongly horse blankety and all those other phenolic descriptors.
Yeah, no, it's not Orville, in other words, because I remember
exactly.
The first time I had that, and I was like, whoa, not sure about this at all.
Yeah.
Come to like it since, but the first time is a bit whoa. So, I mean, I've been holding you here for a while, so I know you have to get back. Where do you see yourselves going? So, like, are you going to expand the barrels? Are you going to focus more in on what you're known for there, or are you going to keep this broad? Like, you're still going to have to produce some hazies and some other. Like, it sounds like you're getting out of the kind of the dessert stouts. So, where are you going with that mix? And
You mean, well, I mean, like where we're going as a business too, versus, because there are two things happening. We are opening a second location,
all
upstate, on the Finger Lakes in Canandaigua. So we will. I guess part of the challenge for us is, or one of the, I guess the goals is to expand the tap room business. And in order to do that, I think at this point we just need a second tap room. It needs to be in a location that's not, across the street or even in the same borough, really. So we found a good opportunity to do that, and I think that in some ways will dictate or help guide us to what's next. I think we would love to just kind of grow everything. I think there's nothing we're really necessarily looking to phase out that we haven't already phased out. But yeah, we will have to service that second tap room to some extent. A big part of that is going to be lagers. If mixed firms can do well up there, then I would say that's great. We would, we'll follow, I guess, where that takes us to some extent. We'll follow where the market pulls us to some extent. I just think we know that we can't, you can't force a large volume of a specific kind of beer on the market. Regardless of your reputation, I don't know if anyone can necessarily do that. We have our hopes and dreams and wishes of, what we could do, but I think we're in a pretty good place with what the market can handle. And then it's just from my expect. I don't know. Brett might have a slightly different or thought or opinion on this, but I just think if we could scale everything up where we are now, increase our volume with everything we're doing, it would be great if Mixed Firm did have a surge and became the biggest style of beer or something like that. But yeah, we kind of, to some extent we are. I mean, to a big extent, actually, we're sort of bound to what the market can accommodate in terms of selling and carrying our beer.
Yeah, I think I've said this a few times recently. I think we are the brewery that we're going to be. I think that we have found our niche, and I think that it's a matter of always improving upon what we do, and deciding like sort of where to concentrate. And I think as far as like from the mix firm side of things, my real preference is food or saison. I think that's some of the most approachable. It's some of the most it's easiest to produce, most consistent to produce. I do want to maintain a more scaled back. So I want to scale that up. Whereas with barrel aged sour, I want to scale that back a little bit. We have a lot of barrels, and that I think we need to assess like sort of what their role is, and I want to keep sort of very like lambic inspired beers in barrels, and I want to and a few other things where I think that they benefit from an individual barrel rather than a more collective sort of food or maturation. But I think that there's always going to be a place. It's just we need as Tyler said, we need to read the room as far as like where the customer is. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with having some small batches of small portions of batches that are bottled and are available for the consumer in our tap room is sort of like showcase beers that aren't necessarily expected to help pay the bills.
Right. Yep. And just, I mean, you've gone, it sounds like, you started, like I said, just over 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. You went through the pandemic, had to rewrite everything, and now you've been feeling your way. Is there anything do you regret any of it? Is there anything you say that I wish I'd done differently, or God, I wish I'd never started this in the first place?
There are days. I think, yeah, no, we definitely, there's a lot of hindsight 2020 things. It's, we entered the business, or we entered this in one era and now find ourselves in a different era. And I think we have a very bright future, but we've had a very rocky road behind us. And so, yeah, I mean, I can think of a number of things. I mean, many things we should have done differently, could have done differently. But you sort of make those decisions in the moment. But I think looking back, the decisions we've made so far, wow, I'm really glad we did that. Decisions far outnumber why did we do that decision? So,
right, and it got you where you are. So you don't regret starting it, I guess, is that the end story?
Not today.
You're very positive about the future.
It's a daily thing. Yeah, I'm very positive about the future. But, sometimes I look like, oh my God, that was rough.
Everyone has bad days,
Yeah.
All right, guys, listen, thanks a million for your time. I know you have to go on that. So, yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Brian.
It's been a while since I've
Likewise.
been to New York, but I'm going to come over and try one of those food or Solera saisons sometime.
Please do. Yeah, let us know.
Okay. Listen, thanks a million, guys.
Definitely.
Thanks, Brian.
See you again sometime.
Take
care. Yep.
Thank you. All right.